Hi, welcome to Brady's Blunders, where I usually show you my mistakes, but today I'm going to do something else completely. And I want to tell you why I think the AlphaGo-Lee Sedol match is super cool, and what I've seen so far, and what I'm looking for in the future, and I'm going to organize it by themes. There are players far stronger than me who are analyzing the games, so if you're really interested in game analysis, I'll link to some things down below. But in terms of trying to understand how this new artificial intelligence is interacting with the super strong pro, that's what I'm going to try to get into. Interestingly, AlphaGo was announced in late January on my wedding day. So this is a date I'm not going to forget. But as part of its introduction, DeepMind, the creators of AlphaGo, explained that they had beaten the European champion 5 times, 5 games to none, and they provided the game records. Now this champion is a Chinese pro named Fan Hui, and he's now living in France. So he's the strongest player in Europe, and he was pretty crushed by AlphaGo. Well, they provided the game records, and of course the professional world dissected those game records, and they found what they felt were strengths and weaknesses of this artificial intelligence. And my favorite was by Myungwan Kim. Now he's a Korean strong professional who lives in America, and he gave his analysis in a video that I'll link to down below. And he he certainly confirmed that AlphaGo was strong, and that it could read really well, and was really good. But he also identified what he felt were some weaknesses in its performance, and explained why he thought Lee Sedol would be able to beat it. And these are the basis for the first few themes that I've got here. So the first one is style. And he observed that AlphaGo played in a soft and peaceful style, and it didn't seek out fights. Now, if Fan Hui overplayed and made a mistake, then yes, AlphaGo would go ahead and fight and cut off a group and perhaps kill it. But it didn't pick the fights on its own, and it didn't start any 50-50 fights, where the outcome was uncertain. So it seemed quite peaceful. Now this is a complete contrast to current top professional play. The best players of today, the strongest players like Lee Sedol and Ke Jie of China, they love to fight, and they're not real compromisers. They want to eke every inch of profit, every centimeter, every millimeter of profit out of any given encounter. And as part of that, that leads to a lot of fighting, because they're not willing to compromise. And they have great confidence in their reading. When Myungwan said that AlphaGo's style was soft, and it didn't seek out fights, and it was peaceful, this is actually a criticism, because it so directly contrasts contemporary Go. So this would be very interesting. Number one, would AlphaGo continue its peaceful style against Lee Sedol? And if so, would it work for it? And on the flip side, would it decide to fight instead, or accept the fights that Lee Sedol offered? And if it did fight, how would it perform? Could it fight as well as the best fighters of today? This would be really cool to look for. All right, the second theme is the value of sente. And Myungwan explained that that AlphaGo doesn't seem to really understand the value of sente. Now, for you non-Go players, the sente is the idea of taking initiative, that you finish a sequence on one part of the board, and then the player who gets to play first on another part of the board, that player has sente, or initiative. And there were several instances where AlphaGo could have played a sequence that would have let it go first somewhere else. And that would have been a really good choice, because that first move somewhere else was really valuable. Yet AlphaGo didn't play that sequence, and instead let Fan Hui play somewhere else first. And Myungwan Kim felt that this was a weakness. So this would be something to look for. I may not always know the value of sente, but I can see if someone takes sente. So this is what I was looking for in the games. The third was innovation, and it was explained this way, that there are many, many set patterns in Go, and you'll see them in game after game after game where professionals will play a very similar pattern that has been played before. But top professionals will vary from those patterns if the local conditions require it. And in observing the games, Myungwan Kim found a couple areas where AlphaGo, if it had varied from the set pattern, would have had a better result. But instead, it just played the moves it seemed to already know. In other words, it didn't innovate. And this was something to look for in the games against Lee Sedol. Could it come up with new moves? So as a corollary to that, we've got a whole lot of moves that we know are bad, and a whole lot of moves that we wouldn't play because we've been taught, don't do this here because, and there's generally a reason, but things that we know that in general we shouldn't do. Would AlphaGo come up with a move that directly violates that wisdom? And if it did, would it turn out to be a bad move, or would it have found a new reason to do it? In other words, is our received wisdom completely correct? And if AlphaGo could show us that, yeah, the moves you think you know aren't necessarily the best, that would be so cool. This is, if the computer can innovate, if it can prove things we know wrong, if it can make a strong pro go, wow, I've never seen that move before, or I would never have thought of that, that's when we would know that AlphaGo is bringing something definitely new to the Go world. So these are the things that I was looking for. And then one other thing is, would Lee Sedol play his normal game, or would he adjust his game for AlphaGo? And so these were the things that I was looking for overall. The last three on the list, let's come to later. Let's get into that first game, and let's keep those themes in mind as we do it. So in the first game, Lee Sedol had black, and AlphaGo obviously had white. And here we get to move 7. And so this is not AlphaGo, this is Lee Sedol's move 7, and this is new. This is not played in today's games. Usually this stone here is played along the top, reinforcing this stone and building, sort of a three-dimensional structure, if you will. And playing here is, well, I guess we could call it creative, but everyone assumed, and listening to the pros, what was said is, Lee Sedol played this move because it's not in White's database, right? In other words, he's already trying to throw AlphaGo off by playing a move it won't have studied. If Lee Sedol just played a move that's always played, then AlphaGo would know how to handle it. But the way that it's been stated is actually really interesting and gives us an insight as to how the pros are thinking about this. All right. So this move wouldn't be in White's database. All right. White doesn't have a database, at least to my knowledge. White is an artificial intelligence based on the concept of deep learning. It's teaching itself how to play Go. It doesn't have a database where where X leads to Y, and I've memorized all of these moves. It's actually trying to learn Go. It's playing itself millions and millions of times, trying to understand Go better. Kind of like you or I would. So it's not referring to a database. The question is, does it understand the purpose of different moves? So this move 7 is unusual. And the question is it a good move or is it a bad move? Is there a reason it's never played? And AlphaGo was able to answer that question, at least for this game, just 11 moves later. AlphaGo was able to say, yes, I think this move was bad, and here's why. But we'll get to that in just a minute. AlphaGo started in the upper right-hand corner and black pincered. And now we come to another really key point. And this is, it really is kind of amazing. 8, 9, this is move 10. And at move 10 of the first game between AlphaGo and Lee Sedol, AlphaGo played a move that humans consider bad. And on the Go servers around the world, people erupted in laughter. How could it play this move? Everyone knows this is a bad move. And this is not what we call joseki. Now, corner interactions in Japanese are referred to as joseki, and people study them and people memorize them because they happen a lot. And so therefore people who know Joseki and know common corner sequences know that this move is unusual and bad, and they can even tell you why. And I'll show you really quickly why. The normal sequence would have white playing like this, black playing like this, and now if white plays here and black plays here and white here, black pulls back here. Now notice the position of A. Black's made a very nice strong group. This is considered acceptable. This is an equal result for both sides. But black is settled, and the move at A is well positioned. But could it be better? Well, if we follow the sequence in the actual game, it's different. And here, when black pulled back and white played here, and then black played here, and white came here, now black could play a new A. So by changing the order of moves, it looks like black gets a better position. This move is one stone further down towards its other friends, and it's one stone higher. So it's gaining more points. So this looks to be very good for black, or at least that's the received wisdom. But white didn't care. And white did something else that we're normally taught not to do, and it pushed from behind on the fourth line. And it did that to gain a stronger position. I don't think anyone would say this is bad, but it's very clear that white is sacrificing points along here for some purpose. And that purpose is this attack. And Lee Sedol has said he was at a disadvantage at this game from the opening. And I think this is the move he's referring to. Because with this move, white is able to severely attack this black stone and gain the initiative on the whole board. So by exchanging one bad move and a second questionable move, white was able to gain a local advantage, making this invasion very, very possible. Oh, let me go back for 1 second, because people have been looking at these moves. So it doesn't seem that this is bad for white. So does that mean that black made a mistake? And I think pros right now, these are the rumors out of China, are thinking that this move here was wrong, and instead black should just play like this. Now I don't know all the continuations, and we'll see what the future holds. But already we're getting new Joseki as a result of AlphaGo. Okay, so back to the game. All right. So black came out and white pushed from behind once more, again helping black secure territory very nicely. And then white capped the black stones. And this is called a running fight. Right? We've got two weak black stones here, a weak white stone here. These white stones aren't incredibly strong, so we're all pushing each other around and fighting. And then black played this move that looks very, very normal. And I suspect that old AlphaGo, the one from 6 months ago, would have played differently. But new AlphaGo said, no, I don't want to let you push me around, and I'm going to play here. I'm going to threaten to cut you off. And black connected, and then all of a sudden, here at move 28, we have our first fight. So, and this is a fight that both players agreed to. AlphaGo wanted to fight, and Lee Sedol wanted to fight. And I think this was Lee Sedol's plan, right? I want to see if this artificial intelligence can fight as well as me. Well, this would be interesting. And the Go world was wrapped. You know, what's going to happen now? And AlphaGo just refused to back down, as did Lee Sedol. And I won't get into the specific moves. If you really want to understand move-by-move conflicts and fighting that occurred in this game, I'll give links below to longer analyses. But just understand that while this group is separated, and this group is separated, and this group is separated, and this one, you can see it's chaotic. There's nothing simple about this. And this is just a very complicated fight, and it's a very complicated fight that both players played well. And thus answering the question, can AlphaGo fight? All right, so this is the next interesting move, and it's one that I'm not certain, but I don't think many pros would play this move. And it it looks like it's trying to fight, but very quickly it becomes apparent that this move is a sacrifice. And it's a sacrifice that forces black to make a little bit of funny shape here and to help white on the right. So let's just show the moves that are played. And so black's moved out here. So these stones made black move out here, but they also make it so that white can safely descend this way, helping its huge group. The other thing that's really interesting about this is black decided to go ahead and make sure that these two stones couldn't move out. Black was concerned about the aji of these stones. Now I'm going to use this word again and again. So aji is potential. It's a Japanese word that literally translates as taste. So if there's potential for these stones to move out and fight or cause complications, that potential is referred to in Japanese as aji. And white has created aji by playing these stones here and then leaving them. And black's decided to reduce the aji, reduce the potential, by covering them up. But what does this do? This answers the second point up there, initiative sente. There is value for white to have sente, because if white doesn't do anything, his whole group might come under attack. So he managed to get sente in this local exchange and go ahead and attack this stone here, which indirectly helps his whole group. So the value of sente here was clearly very high, and white found a way to get sente. Pretty cool, huh? All right, so black played on, and here's where we get to the next controversial move, and it's still controversial. When black approached this, everyone expected white to answer this way, and this makes white safe in the corner, gains some points, and makes it easier for white to reduce black's center. All of these black stones are threatening to take quite a bit of territory in the center. So this is what was expected. But instead, white came back and played here. And the consensus today is still that this move is slack, right? That answering that move in the corner is urgent, and coming back and playing here is slack. But what is white doing with this move? Well, the same thing black was doing with this move. White is concerned about the aji, that if it answered, and black couldn't do this right now, but the potential exists for black to do it later. Black can move out this way and potentially save these stones and attack these stones. And if black can do that, it might actually affect the whole upper corner as well. Now, if I played through a sequence right now, it would be clear that it doesn't work all that well for black until he has other stones in the area. But having that potential behind clearly made white uncomfortable. So it covered it and fixed the problem, and now these stones have no potential whatsoever. It eliminated the aji. And here's the next big point, and it's actually number 8 down there at the bottom. And is it possible? Okay, we as humans are beginning to understand, especially over the last 20 years, the value of sente, right? Of is it worth, and I've talked about this, is it worth taking a local loss to be able to play first somewhere else? And we're able to actually put a number on the value of sente, and that's pretty cool. But is it possible that AlphaGo has been able to put a value of aji, of the potential that's left behind, of the danger? And is it possible that we humans are underestimating the value of aji? And everyone thinks this is a bad move just because we're wrong about our assessment of that potential. It's pretty interesting when you think about it. But, I guess I'll go with all the pros who say, no, this move is slack, but I'm going to keep this one in mind, and I think we all should. The professional assessment is that this move is slack. Will that be the professional assessment in 5 or 10 years? I don't know. And the reason people thought this move is slack is it's very, very powerful when black can make a double attack on this stone. But white had answers. And so these moves are not unprecedented. they have occurred before in games, but they're really unusual. I certainly didn't expect it, and I don't think any of the pros who are watching the games expected them either. And what these moves are doing is they're making it easier for white to settle himself and be perfectly safe. So this is the continuation, and actually with this, with the capture of this stone, this white group is now completely alive. One thing I want to point out is that it's completely alive in Sente. So yet, once again, AlphaGo has been able to get Sente out of a situation. It really does seem to understand the value of Sente, and that was the purpose of these seemingly bad moves, these throwaway moves, at least I think it was to get Sente to play here. And here we come up with another somewhat controversial move. When white played this and black played this, Michael Redman in his analysis said white's going to either answer here or here, which damages this stone, and this is a reasonable result for white. But there's no way white would play this and not continue locally, because that makes the black capture at N2 just too good. So to play the Hane and not to continue locally, the received wisdom is that's a bad move. But white didn't agree because white played somewhere else. So this is kind of interesting. And I think that the purpose of M2 is to make it more difficult for this stone to connect over here. And certainly if black goes ahead and captures that stone right now, it directly hurts this stone. All right. So then white played in the upper corner, which forces this black group to have to live locally immediately. Otherwise, it's going to die and the game is over. So there's an exchange of moves as black lives, and this is the move that had everyone around the world who was watching the game going, wow, this is a really cool invasion. And a lot of people have said actually this move would appear to most pros. Most pros would look at this move and at least consider it, but all the continuations are quite complicated. So it was an amazing move and a great move and maybe the winning move, but maybe not super innovative. But it's pretty cool that it found it. Oh, another funny thing is that in one of the Chinese live analyses as it was going on, when the board position was like this, the strongest player in the world, Kujie, said, if I'm white, I would consider playing R10. And no sooner did he say that than white played R10. It used to be considered a compliment to the artificial intelligence if it could predict professional moves with a high percentage of accuracy. I think in the future maybe it's going to be that we'll be impressed with pros when they can find the artificial intelligence's really cool moves. Anyway, by the way, standard wisdom is if you're going to push and black blocks, you should cut, but white doesn't care about received wisdom and went ahead and made an exchange here. So this is very interesting. This exchange somewhat settled white's group. It took part of black's side away. Remember, this looked like it was all going to be black's side, and sacrificed a few stones here and hurt itself on the outside a little bit. These three stones have a relationship with this one. So it was a trade, but it was a trade that once again white made in Sente and was able to come up and secure the whole upper left corner, which is worth 40-ish points. And so Sente was pretty big right now. And once again, AlphaGo found it. And some people consider this move right here the losing move for Lee Sedol. He's clearly trying to attack the whole white group, and he's threatening to capture these three stones. But white's able to protect this one stone here, which again hurts this one, and so help his whole group indirectly. But that also affects this whole area over here. So he creates potential to reduce black over there. And this is the second move that some people consider the losing move and believe that black should have played here, preserving the corner, because his attack on white completely sputtered out. So again, I'm not going to go into the details, but black couldn't descend here to this move. So white has a gain, and if white's able to come back and play here, black's central huge area will be greatly reduced. It turns out not to be so important. When white played here, black played here, and again, this move here, people consider not that great for black. And at this point, when white takes the corner, the game is effectively over. It's very close on the board if you're to count. Black might have a lead of a couple points on the board, but because black goes first, black has to give 7.5 points to white. And already this game is now out of reach for Lee Sedol. All right, instead of going through the last few moves of this, I want to jump into the second, but continue along the same themes. So let's put this one aside. And for the second game, AlphaGo had black and Lee Sedol had white. And I will spend less time on this one. So there are a few interesting things that happen, starting with this move here. And again, black is AlphaGo, and black played up here. Now this is considered a very unusual move. You would expect, instead, black to play around here or maybe here and reinforce this bottom group. But instead, black played what's called the Chinese opening on the top side. But that leaves this group weak. And it's not uncommon to leave stones weak there, but it is uncommon to add a third stone before leaving it weak. Let me explain. It wouldn't have been that weird for black to play here now. And because black is going to treat these two stones lightly, or at least one of these two stones lightly, make shape with the other, and have a decent result. But when black played this, he made his stones heavier and less easy to sacrifice. And that's why it's so unusual to tanuki at this point. And I think time will tell whether this is a reasonable move or not. But this game will not tell us, because rather than attacking right away, Lee Sedol played over here. And again, this is coming back to the fifth point, Lee Sedol's style adjustments. This is not the move that most people think Lee Sedol would normally play. Lee Sedol is a fighter, and the consensus by the Korean pros who've played him is that they think Lee Sedol would normally play this and attack these three stones and say, how are you going to make shape? How are you going to live? Or are you going to run to the center and try to gain directly from attacking it? Or maybe this move, which looks like a very nice point as well. But instead, when Lee Sedol played over here, a lot of people consider this to be a little slack and out of character. It allows black's dangerous move of playing somewhere else. It allows him to immediately recover from that. And he does. And he does it, by the way, this is also considered an unusual move. This is it's an unusual move at this point. This move is played in many, many pro games, but it's usually played much, much later. It's not played this early in the opening. And it's also not played without an extension on this side. So black played there, and then decided to settle this group, which this stone was attacking. So again, if you want the details of why each move is played, there are longer analyses out there that are really, really good that I'll recommend you watch, and I'll link to. All right, so one thing to note, when black played this, he took away the corner, said, all right, I'm going to settle things. But once again, he did it in sente. He made white strong on the outside and then came back and said, okay, now I'm going to make myself safe. Really good sequence. And then we come to this move. And I think many of us would expect this move if white had played the stone on the third line. This move is called a shoulder hit. And if you think about it, shoulder hit, it means you're on someone's shoulder and you're pushing them down. And that's exactly what this stone does. It's on a shoulder of this stone and it's going to push him down. And it could be on the other side as well, by the way. And white has two ways to answer. It can push out this way, but still then he's getting hurt over here, or he can play this way, but this is maybe lower than he would like to play. So it's called a shoulder hit, and it's really common on third line stones. But White hadn't played a third line stone. White had played a fourth line stone, and so this was a fifth line shoulder hit. And it's not unprecedented in Go. It's certainly been played before, but it's unusual. And the received wisdom, the common wisdom is, yeah, you don't shoulder hit fourth line stones because you're just giving away points, right? It's too easy for White to go ahead and make lots of points on the right-hand side by just playing underneath. And generally, this is bad. But interestingly, about this particular situation, because this White group down here is so strong, White doesn't really want to add stones on the fourth line over here. They're inefficient and not good. So White went ahead and played in this direction, which again is a little over-concentrated with these other stones. So I don't think White was terribly happy, and Lee Sedol took a long time to think about his response to that stone. Another thing about this is, I said it's not unprecedented in human play and professional play, but in general, when you're going to see it, there will be more black stones, like here and here, and it's very clear that black is trying to build a lot of territory in the center. But this black formation has, this side open and this side open, and it's not at all clear how it's going to be able to make points. So it really is an unusual move. This was an interesting exchange. And so another purpose of black's moves here is to go ahead and be able to connect solidly here and start a fight. And the pros who were watching actually predicted that this is what would happen. But the consensus, as this fight was going on and as this continuation occurred, is that this result was great for White. It wasn't even really a fight. Because White was able to settle himself so quickly and so easily. And this black group looks a little funny. I mean, it had a few forcing moves, but it's not clearly alive yet. And so White's able to gain points along the side, gain safety along here, and everyone was like, this is great for White. But then after black played its next move, which again, is a move that White really needed to answer. And then people counted, and they were like, well, maybe black isn't behind. Maybe this whole exchange wasn't so bad for black. It's really interesting. But once again, with this move is kind of cool because it relates well with the top, and it might make some territory. And it also has a relationship with these stones, and it might help them run away. So it's an interesting move. But another thing that happened with this exchange is, again, black got sente and was able to take the initiative on the board and threaten this group. So White defended itself, and again, black's taking attack here begins to secure the topside territory for him. And again, I'm going to go through moves really quickly because this video is already getting long. And this move here, many people consider the losing move. This is the play that professionals are looking at and saying this move wasn't entirely necessary, and it again gave the initiative to black. So it's big, it took lots of points, but it was too early, and giving the initiative to black was too big. And black's move with the initiative, again, it also looks slow, but it really helps these stones and really starts to work well with these stones at the top to build what may be center territory and make an invasion harder. And it was only a few moves later that White jumped in here. And this is where we get to what many people consider the most interesting move of the game. All right, the shoulder hit was really interesting, but black's response here was really, really interesting. All right, and so for those of you who don't know Go, generally when your opponent steps into your house like this, right, you can see that if you're black, you've got a lot of stones in the area, and your opponent jumps into your house. All of the normal responses are within one space of that stone. You might see this, right? You might see this, You could see this. All of these moves are relatively common. You might even cover it a little bit further away. But any stone that's normally played in response to this is quite close to this. That's just what we're used to seeing in all the games that we watch. But AlphaGo didn't do that. AlphaGo played all the way over here. And this is where we had one of the coolest comments of any of these games. Myungwan Kim, when he saw this move, was like, wow. If this move works, then AlphaGo is going to win all 5 games. And that's what he said. If this move works, AlphaGo is going to win all 5 games. And so to Myungwan Kim, it seems to me that this move is the move that says, I'm AlphaGo and I am stronger than humanity. This is, which is really, really quite cool. And it's indirectly attacking the stone, right? It's taking away one direction it can escape. And it actually helps even if white invades into the corner. You know, with something like this stone actually turns out to be well positioned to help. And so it's actually doing several things at once, but it's just not a move even most pros would consider. Okay. That's not what happened. And as we look at the full continuation, I don't think white's very happy. So this was the invading stone, and it's okay to give up the invading stone if you can get something, you know, out of it, if you can get some other profit. So here, white lost the invading stone, but unfortunately for white, the stones that are on the outside still aren't strong. So it's not clear that white got much out of this exchange. It's very clear what black got. Black got definite points along the top. So white decided he had to connect with his friends, and AlphaGo said, yeah, I don't care, I'm going to continue to attack. And it really did continue to attack for the rest of the game. And I'm going to go quite fast here. And again, there are some cool moves in here, which if you'd like, if you don't understand them and you'd like to learn more, I will link to analyses. But I want to talk about one last thing. And it's getting very clear by this point that black has a pretty big lead, a substantial lead in this game. But there's an interesting choice that happens. And so you can see that black's cutting things off in the center, and it's building more and more points in the center. So right now you can see that all of this are black's points. So it's not just taking third line points, it's 6th, 7th line points all the way up here. This is a really big territory. And this is the move I want to discuss. And this is the world that the consensus is this is a straight up mistake by black. All right? When black plays this move, AlphaGo, it's capturing these 4 stones, and in capturing these 4 stones, it gains 2 extra points here. So the value of this move, just on a points level, is 10. Right? And so that's pretty good. But if we look at the continuation that white actually played, these are the moves that were actually played, and then white played here. White's now just captured these 6 stones, which are worth 12 points, because each stone is worth a point, and then when they're eliminated, the points that are underneath there are worth a point. So it's clear that this capture is worth at least 12. So black's capture is worth 10, white's capture is worth 12. This seems like a straight up bad move, and that's the general consensus. But I'd like to point something out, and that is, and I'm sure the pros are absolutely right that this was a bad move. But what about Aji? What if black doesn't play these moves, and these 4 white stones are alive? What's the status of this huge black group? I think it's alive. I think it should have little problem settling. But I suspect that the real reason AlphaGo played here is the value of Aji. And it didn't like the potential that is left behind if, and by the way, this is all my supposition. If it's all wrong, I take full responsibility. But I suspect it didn't like the potential behind if white's able to save this group, and you've got all of these black stones which don't for sure have a living shape. Personally, again, I think it should live, but maybe AlphaGo saw a sequence in which it doesn't, or it just didn't like the potential against it. So perhaps that's why AlphaGo played badly. And again, this is part of my theory of maybe it's humanity doesn't understand the value of Aji. All right. And I showed you this move, which Lee Sedol actually played to capture these stones, but people say this is the final losing move. And a better sequence for White would have been this, and fighting this very complicated ko. And I don't know who would have won the ko, and I'm sure someone's figured it out by now, but White just didn't have enough points to play safely and capture the corner, and White needed to do something more. And at this point, it's very clear that Black has won the game. So let's conclude by coming back to the themes. The question of style. Is AlphaGo peaceful and calm and fight avoiding? No, that was clearly established within the first 25 moves of the first game. AlphaGo embraces fighting, especially when it thinks it has an advantage. Does AlphaGo understand the value of Sente? I don't know that it understands it in exactly the same way that humans understand it. The way that Myungwan Kim would assign an exact amount of points to the value of Sente. We don't know if it thinks of it that way, but it certainly seems to understand that it has great value. And it seemed in the first two games against Lee Sedol that it got Sente a whole lot. It really seemed to like Sente and was willing to take losses to get it. Innovation. Would AlphaGo just play moves it's seen before, the same old, same old? No. It answered that definitively from the very beginning, I think move 10 of the first game, that it was going to play moves that other people wouldn't consider, at least 99% of the time. And it's done it in both games, and I imagine we'll keep seeing more. What about received wisdom? Is AlphaGo going to help us think about moves differently and look at moves differently? Well, I think that first Joseki in the upper right of the first game is already an answer to that question. We were all laughing at it, saying how bad that move was, but it got a good result. So our received wisdom is not 100% perfect, and it's already finding that out for us. And I think a move like the fifth line shoulder hit in the second game, right here, is another one. We're all taught that's bad, and we wouldn't consider playing it. But maybe we will now that we've seen AlphaGo do it. And it's been interesting to see Lee Sedol adjust his style. He played an unusual opening in the first one to take advantage of the computer's ignorance and lack of familiarity, and hopefully, and I think he hoped that by bringing it into uncharted territory, he would have an advantage. And then in the second game, he wasn't quite as severe as most people who know him well feel he would be. So I guess you could argue that Lee Sedol hasn't played his game for real yet. And it'll be interesting to see what he does, especially in Game 3. So just how strong is AlphaGo? We don't know yet. And I think we're all getting the feeling that Lee Sedol may not win a game, but we don't know that yet. And even if Lee Sedol doesn't win, it won't tell us for sure. But I think especially with this mistake that we talked about that it made, sacrificing or gaining 10 points and giving up at least 12. And the consensus is that was straight up bad. It's not perfect. So the question is, though, how not perfect is it, and how much stronger, is it stronger than humanity? We just don't know, but it's going to be cool to watch and see. All right. And then there's the concept of the masterpiece. And we haven't been given one yet. And let me explain what that is. So the Go world will describe a game as somebody's masterpiece when they play really well. And maybe they find an amazing move or two and they defeat an opponent who also played a really good game. So when that happens, when you have someone who plays brilliantly and finds an innovation and comes up with a way to win a game against someone else who's also playing really well, that game is considered a masterpiece. And we haven't seen that yet. And the question is, will we? The first game of Lee Sedol versus AlphaGo, we're gonna remember that game record for all of our lives and probably a lot longer. People are gonna be able to look at that and go, yeah, that's game one of AlphaGo, Lee Sedol. But are the two of them going to be able to get together and give us another game that we'll all want to study forever because it's either Lee Sedol's masterpiece or AlphaGo's masterpiece? I want to see them both play superbly from beginning to end. Are we going to get that? And then finally, and again, this is just my theory, the value of Aji. Does AlphaGo have a different approach to it? Whether it's being able to assign numerical points of, this Aji is worth 12 points, and so I should eliminate it, or whether it's a percentage of winning approach. Like having this Aji here, I've got a 2% greater chance of something going wrong because of that Aji and my losing the game, and therefore to get rid of that 2% difference, I'm going to go ahead and play this now. I don't know what the answer is, but it certainly seems to value Aji higher than we do. All right, I hope this video worked for you. Rather than just analyzing the games, I tried to arrange it along themes. I hope that made some sense. What themes have I missed? These are the things that I intend to look for in Game 3. Is there something else I should look for in the future games? Let me know in comments. Is there a way I can make these videos better? Please let me know in the comments. But if you liked it, please subscribe, like, tell your friends, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.